But we've got a few people who didn't get the adulthood message there now, and they think that really throwing the United States into default wouldn't be a big deal. Well, you know, they can just listen to that little tape of my father. They seem to revere him for all sorts of reasons. Well, he's saying it would be a big deal, like a really big, stupid deal. So get over it, grow up, and get this thing done, and then we'll go on to talk about other stuff.
Does anybody think it's going to play a big role in 2012, or by then is it going to be something else?
I think it's a non-issue. I think from 2012 standpoint, I think Obama has done day to day it changes, but I think he's done a reasonably decent approach to this, and that is to try to put enough rope out there. I don't know that I'm agreeing with 90% of what he says, but I think by 2012 that's old news, don't you? I think it's old news. We're so focused on it right now. For example, right now we've got the Murdoch issue coming along. Randy and I were talking about how do you avoid the Murdoch issue for this issue, because this really is somewhat of a non-issue when it all clears. And I think by 2012 it's even going to be less important. It's important to us right now. We can get mad about it. We can scream about Obama. God knows we can scream about the craziness of all of it. But 2012 is a long way off.
And we will scream about it. Mike?
I don't think there's been a bigger non-issue on the political scene than this debt ceiling, excuse me, cover Molly's ears, bullshit. You know? I'm serious. It is ridiculous. The average person out here, like me, I don't care about the debt ceiling. What is that? I want a job. Right. I want to be able to take care of my kid. I want to be able to pay for school. I want to make my house payment. Yeah. And if these people in Washington want to around with debt ceiling, do it where I can't see it. You know, give it to Eric Cantor. Let him do it.
Well, so Norman, let me ask you this question then. So how do we get to where we are with it then? If it is such BS.
Well, this is the problem. For the last 30 years, Ron, I'm sorry, since your dad started an era in American politics that I hope had ended with Mr. Obama's election, but apparently has not. We have seen the American political scene get ever more psychotic. And just when you think that we have gotten as crazy as we're going to get, here comes Michelle Bachmann and her band of 87 lunatics.
Right.
You know, pardon me for stealing somebody's line, but I want my country back.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
these people are all insane, and this is just a symptom. This is just an example of it. So this will be like a bad meal. You know, it's painful as it goes through, but it'll pass.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you.
Hey, it's an image. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the image. I hope you haven't eaten much. Yeah. But it's on to the next piece of craziness. It's just on to the next crazy
thing.
thing.
You know, it's like Mike just said. I mean, and Nancy Pelosi said today, right? She's waiting for John Boner's adult moment, you know? Although he hasn't cried yet, has he? And you're waiting for it, aren't you?
Yeah.
Just that bronzer to start. Mr. President.
But wait a minute, we have a congressman here, and I'd like to actually, because you're there. You know what's going on much more than we do.
So you can explain this and make it all clear.
Are we, at the end of the day, what are the chances of getting a clean debt ceiling bill? Without anything larding it up attached to it, just a clean, we just raise the debt ceiling and then go back to arguing about taxes.
I mean, actually, that's what should happen. There shouldn't be anything else attached to it. What's complicated it is that when people start talking about a grand plan and a big deal, and put in things that are not really connected to the debt ceiling, then we end up with the beginning of a train wreck. And before we all came on, before all of you came on, I shared with the audience that the very fact that Social Security was injected into the debate over the debt ceiling was bogus. You know, Mike's had another way of describing it. But the fact of the matter is that 74 times since 1962, they've increased the debt ceiling, 10 times since 2001. This should be done as a matter of course, but making a fiscal Armageddon out of this
right.
does a disservice to the country.
But can I jump in? Because
yes,
I think we're all in the business of of messaging on the
Right,
progressive side.
right.
How did this happen this time?
well,
How did
right.
this get linked for the first
That-
time
that-
in history? How
exactly.
did we get this linked to the debt ceiling?
Yeah,
Pat,
exactly.
what do you think?
This is like one of these shiny things that sometimes even we get pulled into. I got to tell you, if you consider the story out there right now, juxtapose the Murdoch story and what it means to democracy if we do our job. Randy was nice enough to have me on her show last week, and I really meant this, Randy, when I said if there's an essential story that really ties in to what affects us, it's the Murdoch story.
Oh, sure.
Because if we follow it and we don't get pulled into this thing, this shiny thing, we don't get pulled into this shiny thing, and we can talk about real stories, then this is a story that affects, in the truest sense. Tom Hartman, God, I wish you were here this year. He did a wonderful job. I don't know if you saw it, where he took the Berlusconi, he showed what Berlusconi did to Italy. And he showed what's happening to us, and how is it we run the risk of us not only losing the voice we have, but disappearing. Well, the way you do that is you drive this one notion of what is Murdoch's message, and that is the story, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you, some of you you're on the net all the time, you're bloggers, you have newspapers, you have all types. That is the story that we have to keep alive, because we've got the SOBs on the run if we keep them on the run.
Well, since you're all good at messaging then, though, what's the soundbite for the Murdoch story? What do you say? What is it that you keep drumming for the next
That
year
it's
and a half?
here, that it's not across the lake. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Traditional media is talking like this is a story about the UK. No, it's about Roger Ailes. It's about Roger Ailes paying $11 million to Patricia Reagan to keep her relationship quiet. We all know this story.
Yeah.
$11 million. Now, how do you think for a second that doesn't have some similarities to what happened across the pond? But we have to keep the message.
They're hacking into 9/11 victims.
Exactly.
Cell phones, Rupert Murdoch's testifying somewhere. Whitey Bulger's sitting in prison going, what an asshole. That guy's
Now, in fairness, we don't have hard evidence that absolutely happened. But what we do have, and Randy and I were just talking
neither
about
does
this
Fox News for anything
backstage.
they report,
Yeah.
but they go ahead and report it.
But over the last few years, News Corp, various divisions of News Corp, have paid over $500 million, $660 million to settle hacking lawsuits and shut up the people who are mounting those lawsuits.
Yeah. Ron,
How do
to
you
your
say that
point,
you didn't know
that's
anything about this
If
when you have shelled out over $500 million to shut these people up?
And Ron,
And this
that's
goes
right.
across divisions.
Because, Exxon could not get away saying we had some rogue engineer, or BP, even better. BP couldn't say, we had some rogue engineer who just happened to blow out a pipeline in the Gulf. Oops, we're really sorry. The way businesses work, especially large-scale organizations, is they have corporate business practices that get played out across the full range of the business. So to simply try and localize this, that's what they tried in 06 or 07 with Fox. They said, it was this one rogue reporter and this one rogue investigator, this guy Mulcair, and they both went to jail. So that was the end of the story. And of course, because they control the media, that was the end of the story.
Yeah.
Until the
But it was
whistleblower
also
came out and
because-
started the thing
And
all
the
over again, who's now
whistleblower
dead, by
ends
the
up
way.
Dead, right? The whistleblower ends up dead.
But Randy,
And
these are business
Scotland Yard
practices.
investigates it and says, no suspicious activity here.
Nothing to see here.
And
Nothing to
you
see.
know what's amazing? You think about the payoff that went to Scotland Yard, and then think about, could this happen in America? Well, guess what? It did.
Yeah.
They tried to hire Bernie Kerik, the New York police commissioner,
Right.
and when they found out he was having an affair with one of the biggest book publishers in the News Corps business, Judith Reagan, then...
Regan. She's a Regan.
Regan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Want to make that clear?
Randy,
Yes.
Regan.
see, the problem with our media, is that
Well,
Kate,
And then, wait,
if
there's one more
that
thing. Check
whistleblower
this out.
was
Wait,
killed
wait,
by
wait.
Casey Anthony, Nancy Grace would be all over that.
Nancy,
Mike
What's
Malloy.
the mood? Yeah.
Mike Malloy's trying to jump in.
Media
We'll get
mom.
to the
Yeah.
congressman.
You know, the Murdoch story, the Papa's right, the Murdoch story is the most essential story going on in this country right now because it hits so many levels about what has happened to political discourse in this country. But I fault, I mean, Murdoch is Murdoch. He's a real bastard as far as I'm concerned. But what about the American media? What about the American political system that has treated the Rupert Murdoch organization as if it were legitimate? And who steps out? We do, but who steps out? Oberman does, Lawrence O'Donnell does, but who steps out at the New York Times or I can't say Wall Street Journal anymore, CNN, ABC, CBS, and says, look, this organization is corrupting and polluting the very system that we need to survive. Remember, journalism, per se, is the only occupation that has constitutional protection. And when we have some pig bastard like Murdoch and nobody calls him out,
Congressman?
journalism is an awfully strong word for what they're doing
well,
over
that's
there,
right.
Mike.
That's right. It's
Let's-
not. No.
yeah.
I said journalism has First Amendment protection.
Yes.
It's the only occupation that they don't say the right of plumbers shall not be abridged. You know.
Unless you're Richard Nixon.
I don't know if this is
Wait a
either
minute, can I
a
just-
dream for you, Congressman, or a nightmare to be on stage with 6 talk show hosts. Probably a little of both, but go ahead.
Wait, and Congressman, I don't think I got an answer. I really wanted to get your take on that, on the media narrative.
Well, I want to do that right now,
Okay.
and here it is. I just first of all, when it came out to the audience, remember I mentioned about the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and it changed our monetary policy. And most people, who were in the audience certainly weren't there at the time that happened. But we're living with the effects of a system where private banking controls our economy, even though it started off with the public, according to the Constitution, being able to have control over the monetary system through the Congress, Article 1, Section 8. Now, that sets up this next point. 1934, I mentioned Social Security and how it's rock solid for the next, through 2037 without any changes. How Social Security was created in 1934. People forget why Social Security was created. It was to make sure we didn't have poorhouses anymore, to give elderly a chance to have a decent golden years and to really be a serious economic and social safety net. The same year, 1934, the Federal Communications Act passed, and here's what it recognized. It recognized that the airwaves, the electronic airwaves, belong to the people. Now, I want you to wrap your head around this thought, that the airwaves belong to you. That when the Federal Communications Act passed in 1934, it said that all broadcast media licensees should serve in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. Now, hold on. So let's look what's happened. We've totally gotten away from that concept. The corporatization of the media, the vertical and horizontal integration of media with all kinds of other businesses has dramatically changed the relationship of the media to the people and the people to the media. It's like they're out there instead of being an expression of who we really are. So this is just another example of how far our country has gotten away from this vision that was, I think, a very...
Public commons. It was
yeah,
considered
well, right. The public commons is a very democratic vision. And also, as I mentioned earlier, it's up to us to try to figure out how can we reclaim that. And the people who are here on this stage, they're exemplars of a boisterous, rock and roll kind of approach to talk, which is so needed today. We need a diversity of voices, but that was the way it was supposed to be when the Federal Communications Act was passed. We need to get back to the first principles about who controls the airwaves in this country and break up the monopolies in the media.
Yeah.
Let me ask.
Howard Dean said that, and that was the end of his...
One of the things that comes up a lot is
Presidential
we're going to talk about
Congressman,
Obama a ton.
You are
and-
speaking our language. Randy Rhodes and I were just talking about the story where Laura Ingraham got $11,000 worth of jewelry stolen out of her bag at an airport. We're like, we don't $11,000 worth of jewelry.